The 1961 United States 1-cent coin, often casually described by new collectors as the "entitled States of America" or sometimes mistakenly read due to worn lettering, is actually a Lincoln Memorial cent struck at the Denver Mint, identifiable by the D. Mint mark beneath the date on the obverse. And it represents a continuation of the long-running Lincoln cent series first introduced in 1909 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. By 1961, the U.S. Mint was producing extremely large quantities of cents due to high national demand, and the Denver Mint alone struck more than 1.7 billion of these coins that year, making them extremely common in circulation and therefore generally low in collector value unless they exhibit exceptionally high grades or rare minting anomalies. The obverse features the classic bust of Abraham Lincoln designed by the sculptor Victor David Brenner, with the inscriptions, "In God We Trust," prominently above Lincoln's head, the word "Liberty" to the left of the portrait, and the date 1961 followed by the D Mint mark on the right. Because the dies were used heavily during this period, some coins show soft or mushy lettering, leading some inexperienced collectors to misinterpret the phrase or believe it says "entitled States," though this is simply wear or die deterioration rather than an intentional or rare variant. On the reverse, the coin displays the then newer Lincoln Memorial design by Frank Gasparo, used from 1959 to 2008, with United States of America at the top, the traditional motto, E Pluribus Unum, just below, a detailed front-facing depiction of the memorial at the center, and the denomination 1 cent at the bottom. If magnified, the tiny seated statue of Lincoln is actually visible inside the memorial, one of the design's most interesting artistic touches. Most 1961 D cents are composed of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, giving them the classic reddish appearance when uncirculated, which gradually transforms into brown or darker shades as the metal oxidizes with age. In the numismatic grading system, coins may be labeled as RD, full original red, RB, red-brown, or BN brown, with full red examples commanding significantly higher prices because they are far scarcer after more than 6 decades. In terms of value, circulated 1961 D cents typically hold only face value to a few cents, but in uncirculated grades, especially MS 65 to MS 67, the value can rise due to strike quality, luster, and preservation, with the rarest examples, those certified as MS 67 RD by major grading companies such as PCGS or NGC, sometimes reaching several $100s, though such pieces are exceptionally hard to find because the Denver Mint's high-speed production commonly resulted in minor contact marks, weaker details, or uneven color. Collectors also look for specific mint errors, such as off-center strikes, clipped planchets, double dies, and die cracks. However, for 1961 D, there are no major famous double die varieties, though minor anomalies exist and can still attract niche interest if visually dramatic. The phrase, "In God We Trust," plays a notable role in collectors' authentication attempts. On heavily worn coins, letters may appear faint, partially missing, or distorted, but this does not mean the coin is special. True missing letter errors require a definitive strike-through, die break, or filled die rather than simple circulation wear. Many beginners also ask about full steps, full lines, or full details, but on the Lincoln Memorial cent the sought-after element is often the sharpness of the memorial's lines, pillars, and statue interior, sometimes referred to informally as full memorial details, though there is no standardized designation like that used for Jefferson nickels. In the broader historical context, the 1961 D cent comes from the early Cold War era, when the United States economy was expanding rapidly, coinage demand was high, and copper cents were still economical to produce, decades before the switch to copper-plated zinc in 1982, which fundamentally changed the cent's composition. For modern collectors, the coin is often a sentimental find because it represents a tangible piece of mid-20th century American currency still frequently discovered in change, inherited collections, or old jars of pennies. Although extremely common, the 1961 D cent remains an important part of the Lincoln cent series, Valued for its role in the long lineage of American numismatics, its iconic portrait of Lincoln, and the enduring mottos "In God, Next Top." The 1962 United States 1-cent coin, sometimes misread by new collectors as the Entitled States of America due to worn lettering or deterioration of the dies, is actually a standard Lincoln Memorial cent struck at the Denver Mint, identifiable by the small d mint mark beneath the date, and it belongs to one of the most heavily produced and circulated U.S. coin series in history. Minted during a period of enormous economic growth, post-World War II industrial expansion, and rapidly increasing demand for small-denomination coinage across the nation, the 1962 issue is particularly abundant because the Denver Mint produced more than 1.7 billion of these cents, making it one of the most common early 1960s Lincoln cents still found in circulation today. And although many beginners assume the rarity of older dates, most 1962 cents hold minimal monetary value unless preserved in exceptionally high grades or displaying strikingly unusual mint errors. The obverse of the coin features the familiar right-facing bust of Abraham Lincoln, originally sculpted by Victor David Brenner for the 1909 cent that celebrated the centennial of Lincoln's birth, and surrounding this portrait are the classic inscriptions: the national motto, "In God We Trust," above Lincoln's head, the word "Liberty" positioned to the left, and the date 1962 followed by the D mint mark on the right. In circulated examples, heavy wear, grime, and metal flow can sometimes weaken these letters, causing collectors to believe they're looking at a special misprint, but in most cases this is simply the result of decades of handling or deterioration of aging dies, not a valuable minting variety. On the reverse side, the design created by Frank Asparo showcases the Lincoln Memorial, introduced in 1959 to replace the earlier wheat ears design, and surrounding this monument we find United States of America curving across the top, the Latin motto, E pluribus unum, out of many, one, placed above the memorial, and the denomination 1 cent at the bottom. With magnification, a tiny engraving of the seated statue of Lincoln can be seen inside the memorial, making this design one of the most intricate and symbolically layered reverses ever minted on a U.S. coin. The typical 1962 cent is composed of 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin, giving it a warm reddish tone when first minted, though most coins have long since toned to shades of red-brown or chocolate brown due to oxidation. In numismatic grading, the preservation of color, classified as RD, red, RB, red-brown, or BN, brown, plays a major role in determining market value, as full red cents from this era are far scarcer in high grade. Although billions were produced, collectors still seek out mint state, MS, 60 and above, examples that retain strong luster, minimal contact marks from the minting process, and excellent strike definition in the memorial's columns, steps, and central statue. Top-tier specimens graded MS 67 RD by professional services like PCGS or NGC are rare and can sell for significant premiums, sometimes reaching several $100s, because such flawless examples are difficult to obtain from a year of extremely high-volume production. The 1962 cent does not have any famous or widely recognized double die varieties, unlike some other years, but minor anomalies exist, including small die cracks, die chips, weak strikes, off-center strikes, and occasional clipped planchets. These can add modest value if dramatic enough, but most are minor curiosities that appeal mainly to specialized error collectors. Misreadings such as "Entitled States of America" usually come from worn coins where the U, N, or I letters have flattened or blurred, especially on cents that have spent decades in circulation or have been exposed to environmental damage, such as corrosion or chemical cleaning, both of which can distort lettering and mislead collectors into believing they possess a rare misprint. True missing letter errors require evidence of a filled die, struck through debris, or a clear die failure, not simple wear. Historically, the 1962 cent reflects a time when copper coinage was still economically practical for the U.S. Mint, well before the transition to copper-plated zinc planchets in 1982, and the coin remains a small but tangible piece of early 1960s American history, representing an era of shifting politics, growing industry and confidence in national symbolism, with the inscriptions "In God We Trust," "Liberty," and "E Pluribus Unum" serving as reminders of the values that the nation next top. The 1967 United States 1-cent coin, commonly known as the Lincoln Memorial Cent, is an important piece in modern American coinage history and reflects a unique period in the U.S. Mint's operations, as well as the nation's broader monetary environment of the mid-1960s. Minted during a time when the United States was dealing with significant coin shortages, largely due to the rising price of silver, the hoarding of small-denomination coins, and increased demand for circulating currency, the 1967 penny was produced under special circumstances. The mint mark was deliberately omitted, meaning that even though the coins were struck at multiple facilities, Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, none of them bear the usual D or S mint marks. This was intended to discourage collectors from pulling newly minted coins out of circulation, thereby easing the nationwide shortage. The obverse of the 1967 cent features the familiar bust of Abraham Lincoln designed by Victor David Brenner in 1909, with the inscriptions "Liberty" to the left, the date 1967 to the right, and the motto "In God We Trust" arching above Lincoln's head, reflecting long-standing national themes of liberty, faith, and historical remembrance. The reverse depicts the Lincoln Memorial, designed by Frank Gasparo and introduced in 1959 to commemorate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. This design includes the inscriptions "United States of America" across the top, the traditional Latin motto "E Pluribus Unum," out of many one, centered above the memorial's roof, and the denomination 1 cent at the bottom. Struck on bronze planchets made of approximately 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin, the 1967 penny has the classic reddish-brown tone typical of copper coins from the era, although surviving examples today display a wide range of colors depending on circulation wear, oxidation, and storage conditions. In total, over 3.05 billion 1967 cents were minted, an extremely high mintage, making the coin very common, widely circulated, and generally low in monetary value for most worn examples. However, collectors still pay attention to high-grade pieces preserved in uncirculated condition or special mint sets, where strong luster, clean surfaces, and full details can raise a coin's desirability significantly. Because no proof sets were issued in 1967, another result of the mint's efforts to reduce pressure from collectors, specially crafted special mint set (SMS) versions were produced instead, featuring sharper strikes, smoother fields, and a satin-like finish. These SMS coins are more valuable than standard business strikes and are specifically sought after by numismatic specialists. While 1967 cents rarely contain rare errors compared to some other years, varieties such as die cracks, die chips, lamination errors, and off-center strikes do exist, and dramatic or very high-grade errors can attract notable collector interest. Historically, the coin marks the continuation of the Lincoln Memorial reverse that lasted from 1959 until 2008, making it part of one of the most familiar designs in American pocket change. Although the face value remains 1 cent, the intrinsic copper content alone, if melting were legally permitted, has sometimes been worth more than 1 cent due to fluctuations in copper prices, highlighting ongoing debates about the cost of producing small-denomination U.S. coins. In summary, the 1967 United States of America 1 cent, "In God We Trust, Liberty, E Pluribus Unum," Lincoln penny is a highly common but historically rich coin, representing a transitional era in U.S. mint policy, a period of national economic adjustment, and a continuation of the iconic Lincoln design that has been a staple of American coinage for over a century. Next top. The 1968 United States 1 cent coin, commonly called the Lincoln Memorial Cent, represents a significant chapter in modern American numismatics, reflecting the coinage policies, minting technologies, and economic conditions of the late 1960s. Struck at the Denver Mint, identifiable by the small d mint mark located beneath the date on the obverse, the 1968 D penny continues the long-running design introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. On the obverse appears Victor David Brenner's enduring portrait of President Lincoln, facing right with a dignified, somber expression meant to evoke leadership, humility, and national unity. Surrounding this portrait are the inscriptions that form part of American coinage identity. The word liberty appears to Lincoln's left as a national ideal and historic symbol of the country's founding principles, while the motto, "In God We Trust," arcs across the top of the coin, reflecting a tradition that began appearing on U.S. cents in 1909 and has since become standard across denominations. To the right of the portrait is the date, 1968, representing a period when the United States was undergoing social, political, and economic change, while also marking the near end of the coin shortage crisis that plagued the first half of the decade. Unlike 1965 to 1967 cents, which intentionally carried no mint marks due to mint policy aimed at discouraging hoarding, the 1968 D-cent is among the first to resume the use of mint marks, making it the first Denver minted cent with the D reintroduced after a 3-year absence. On the reverse is Frank Asparo's Lincoln Memorial design, introduced in 1959 for the sesquicentennial of Lincoln's birth, showing the neoclassical structure with its iconic columns, steps, and central statue. Even though the statue is quite small on the coin, it is fully rendered and symbolically places Lincoln inside the building. The inscriptions on the reverse include United States of America across the top, which affirms the issuing authority. Directly beneath it sits the motto, E pluribus unum, Latin for out of many, one, representing the unity of the states and the diversity of the nation, and 1 cent at the bottom, declaring the coin's denomination. Composed of the classic bronze alloy used for most U.S. cents from 1962 to 1982, approximately 95% copper and 5% zinc, the 1968 D penny is known for its warm reddish-brown color when uncirculated, though circulated examples can range from deep chocolate brown to lighter shades depending on oxidation, handling, and storage conditions. The Denver Mint produced an enormous quantity of these coins, with a mintage exceeding 2.9 billion, making the 1968 D penny extremely common in circulation and generally low in collector value in well-worn condition. However, high-grade, uncirculated examples, particularly those with strong luster, clean fields, and sharp strike quality, are actively pursued by collectors assembling complete Lincoln cent sets. In addition to regular circulation strikes, the year 1968 is notable for the reinstatement of proof sets, now produced exclusively at the San Francisco Mint, which means that although the Denver Mint made no proofs, the year still holds a special place in numismatic history for marking the return of traditional collector sets. Error coins from 1968 D can range from minor to dramatic, including off-center strikes, die cracks, clipped planchets, and repunched mint marks, RPMs, the latter being especially interesting because mint mark punching at the time was done by hand, making slight variations possible. Certain RPM varieties are cataloged and can carry premiums. The 1968 D-cent also reflects broader economic factors. The mint was still coping with the aftermath of the early decade coin shortage, and copper prices were being monitored closely because significant fluctuations could potentially push the metal value of pennies above their face value, an issue that would grow even more prominent in the 1970s and early 1980s. From a historical perspective, the coin links Americans to Lincoln's legacy during a turbulent era marked by conflict abroad and civil rights struggles at home, and the presence of his image on the nation's most widely circulated denomination reinforced themes of equality, unity, and perseverance. Although millions of these coins remain in everyday circulation or in jars and drawers across the country, collectors appreciate the 1968 D penny for its place in the long-running Lincoln series, its role in the reintroduction of mint marks, and its position next top. The 1982 United States 1-cent coin, commonly referred to as a 1982 penny, holds a special place in modern numismatics because it was minted during a major transitional year when the U.S. Mint changed the cent's metal composition for the first time in more than 2 decades, making 1982 a uniquely complex year filled with multiple varieties that collectors still study closely today. On the obverse of every 1982 cent appears the familiar right-facing portrait of President Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner and in continuous use since 1909, accompanied by the inscriptions, "In God We Trust," arching along the top rim, "Liberty," to the left of Lincoln's profile, and the date 1982 set to the right, depending on the mint that produced a particular coin. This date may or may not be followed by a small mint mark such as D for Denver, while coins struck at Philadelphia carry no mint mark at all. The reverse of the coin, still using Frank Gasparo's design in 1982, displays the stately Lincoln Memorial, flanked by the words "E pluribus unum" above the central building, with United States of America stretching across the upper rim and 1 cent boldly centered below the memorial, all of which had become standard features since the memorial reverse replaced the wheat ear design in 1959. What makes 1982 especially notable is the mid-year shift from the traditional bronze alloy, composed of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, to a new, far lighter copper-plated zinc composition consisting of 97.5% zinc with a thin 2.5% copper coating. This change was prompted by the rising cost of copper, which had made it more expensive for the government to produce each penny than the coin was actually worth. Because the transition took place while production was already underway, the mint produced 7 major varieties in 1982: the bronze large date, bronze small date, zinc large date, zinc small date, plus additional varieties depending on mint location, particularly from Philadelphia and Denver, each distinguishable by subtle differences in the shape of the two, in the date and the weight of the coin. Bronze cents weighing about 3.11 grams and zinc cents weighing about 2.5 grams. For collectors, these weight differences, along with the size of the date numerals, make identification an interesting challenge, and certain varieties, especially the scarcer 1982 D small date bronze, can be significantly more valuable than ordinary examples when authenticated, because they are believed to be extremely rare transitional strikes accidentally produced during the switch to zinc planchets. Most 1982 pennies, however, remain common and circulate widely, and their typical circulated condition commands only face value, though uncirculated pieces can hold modest premiums depending on mint, variety, and preservation. The inscriptions "In God We Trust," "Liberty," and "E pluribus unum" reflect long-standing American motto traditions, appearing on all circulating cents of the era and symbolizing national identity and unity. Though visually similar to pennies minted in surrounding years, the 1982 cent carries a special status due to its complex production history and the fact that it marks the end of the classic high copper era of U.S. small denomination coinage. Today, collectors view the 1982 cent as both a transition point and a miniature archive of U.S. mint decision-making, economic considerations, and design continuity, making even a simple, well-worn example an interesting artifact that illustrates how coinage responds to material costs, technological advancements, and evolving national needs. Next top. The 1983 United States 1-cent coin, commonly called the 1983 Lincoln penny, is an important small denomination coin in modern U.S. numismatics because it was struck during the early years of America's switch to a predominantly zinc-based cent, a transition that began in mid-1982 when soaring copper prices forced the U.S. Mint to abandon the long-standing bronze alloy. Therefore, every regular issue 1983 cent was made from the new composition of 97.5% zinc core with a 2.5% copper-plated exterior, giving the coin a noticeably lighter weight of 2.5 grams compared with earlier copper cents that weighed about 3.11 grams. On the obverse of the 1983 penny, the classic right-facing bust of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner in 1909 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, continues to dominate the field, accompanied by the traditional inscriptions that appear on all circulating Lincoln cents of the era. "In God We Trust" at the upper rim, "Liberty" to the left of Lincoln's profile, and the date 1983 position to the right. Coins minted in Philadelphia carry no mint mark, while those struck in Denver bear a small D beneath the date. The reverse features Frank Gasparo's Lincoln Memorial design, in use since 1959, which depicts the neoclassical building surrounded by inscriptions that emphasize national identity. United States of America, across the top, "E pluribus unum," out of many, one, positioned above the roof of the memorial, and 1 cent placed boldly at the bottom. If viewed closely, the statue of Lincoln can be faintly seen sitting within the memorial, a small but intentional detail that generations of collectors appreciate. Even though 1983 cents are extremely common, with over 14 billion minted across Philadelphia and Denver, this year is especially famous because of several important minting anomalies and rare varieties that collectors actively seek. Among the most desirable is the 1983 Double Die Reverse, DDR. Identifiable by strong doubling on the lettering, United States of America, E pluribus unum, and 1 cent. When verified, this error coin can command high premiums due to its dramatic appearance and relative scarcity. Another remarkable numismatic highlight is the 1983 copper penny error, produced when a few leftover bronze planchets from 1982 accidentally entered the minting presses. These off-metal errors weigh approximately 3.11 grams instead of 2.5 grams, making them easy to detect using a scale. And authenticated examples have sold for thousands of dollars because they represent transitional mistakes that were never intended for public release. Additionally, some 1983 D-cents exhibit plating bubbles or surface distortions caused by the copper plating process on the zinc core, a common issue for early zinc cents. While most plating blisters have little collector value, they serve as reminders of the technical challenges the U.S. Mint faced during the early zinc years. From a numismatic perspective, the 1983 penny marks the first year when every normal circulation cent was definitively zinc-based, representing a complete break from the high copper era of American 1-cent coinage that had lasted since the mid-19th century. This change not only reduced production costs, but also altered the coin's long-term durability, because zinc cents tend to corrode more aggressively when damaged, exposing the underlying metal and causing pitting. Despite being a very common coin in everyday circulation, uncirculated examples from both Philadelphia and Denver can still be found in bright red condition and may bring small premiums, especially high-grade pieces certified by grading services. For most collectors, the appeal of the 1983 cent lies in its blend of high mintage, transitional history, iconic inscriptions, "In God We Trust," "Liberty," and "E pluribus unum," and the presence of highly collectible errors, making even an ordinary pocket change example a small piece of monetary history that reflects America's economic adjustments, minting technology, and the evolving story of the Lincoln cent more than 7 decades after its first introduction. Next top. The 1986 D. Lincoln Memorial Cent, struck at the Denver Mint and carrying the small D mint mark beneath the date on the obverse, is part of the long-running Lincoln Cent series, first introduced in 1909 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. And it represents a period in U.S. coinage when the cent had transitioned from a bronze composition to a copper-plated zinc planchet, a change that occurred mid-1982 due to rising copper prices. The 1986 D-cent therefore consists of a core of 97.5% zinc coated with 2.5% copper, giving it the same outward appearance as traditional bronze cents while significantly reducing cost. The obverse front of the coin continues the familiar bust of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner, which has remained an iconic symbol of the U.S. 1-cent denomination for more than a century. Above Lincoln's head appears the national motto, "In God We Trust," first added to U.S. coins during the Civil War era and included on all circulating U.S. coins since 1938. To the left of Lincoln's portrait, in clean and simple lettering, appears the word liberty, a principle deeply tied to the nation's founding ideals and consistently featured on U.S. coinage as a reminder of the values upon which the country was established. To the right of the portrait is the date 1986, followed by the D mint mark, which designates that the coin was minted in Denver, Colorado. The reverse back of the coin, designed by Frank Gasparo, depicts the Lincoln Memorial, a powerful architectural tribute to the 16th president and a structure symbolizing unity, perseverance, and national memory. If one looks carefully, a tiny seated figure of Lincoln can be seen inside the memorial, an artistic detail mirroring the actual monument in Washington, D.C. Above the memorial arches the Latin motto, "E pluribus unum," meaning out of many, one, a reference to the forming of a single nation from many states and peoples, and one of the foundational mottos of the United States. The top of the reverse bears the inscription, United States of America, while the bottom displays the denomination 1 cent. The 1986 D. Lincoln cent had a high mintage, numbering in the billions, which means that in circulated grades it is quite common and typically holds only face value unless found in exceptional condition. Well-preserved examples, especially those graded MS 65, gem uncirculated, or higher by third-party grading services, can command a premium from collectors who seek flawless luster, clean surfaces, and sharp strikes. For the 1986 D cent, quality can vary due to the copper-plated zinc planchets, which are sometimes prone to issues such as plating bubbles, zinc corrosion, or weak strikes. Coins free of these problems are more desirable. Varieties for this year are modest, but collectors still check for minor die cracks, die chips, double dies, and repunched mint marks, though none from 1986 D are considered major or rare compared to some other years. Despite its commonness, the coin remains culturally significant. It is part of the era when American coinage was shifting materially to keep up with economic pressures, and it illustrates how even everyday pocket change reflects technological, political, and historical considerations. The inscriptions "In God We Trust," "Liberty," and "E Pluribus Unum" together compose a symbolic triad: faith, freedom, and unity, summarizing core American ideals. The Lincoln cent itself has been an object of both nostalgia and debate, with ongoing public discussion about whether the penny should continue in circulation due to its low purchasing power. Nevertheless, coins like the 1986 D remain cherished by collectors for their role in the unbroken continuity of the series. Over decades of handling, circulation, and storage, millions of these coins have acquired natural wear patterns, tone variations, or patinas, each telling a small part of its journey through the everyday economic life of the United States. Even though the 1986 D cent is abundant, high-quality examples serve as reminders of the enduring legacy of coins as miniature works of art, historical snapshots, and cultural artifacts that link generations of Americans to shared national symbols and traditions engraved in metal for more than a century. Next top. The 1994 United States 1 cent coin, commonly known as the 1994 Lincoln Memorial Cent, is part of the long-running Lincoln Cent series that began in 1909 and stands as one of the most enduring coinage designs in American history, representing a blend of artistic tradition, national symbolism, monetary evolution, and mass-scale production that mirrors the social and economic conditions of the country at the time. The obverse of the coin, featuring the iconic right-facing portrait of Abraham Lincoln, was originally designed by Victor David Brenner, whose initials VDB appear on the truncation of Lincoln's shoulder on Modern Issues, restored in 1918 after being removed during controversy over their original size on the 1909 version. The obverse also bears the bold national motto, "In God We Trust," an inscription rooted in American Civil War-era religious sentiment and codified into national coinage during the 19th century, eventually becoming a universal feature of U.S. currency. The placement of this motto above Lincoln's head symbolizes the idea of a nation guided by principles higher than politics, and it reflects a long American tradition of linking civic identity with spiritual heritage. To the left of Lincoln's portrait appears the word liberty, a central concept in the founding philosophy of the United States, and a reminder that the Lincoln Cent was originally created not only to honor Lincoln, who preserved the Union, but also to embody the enduring American values for which he stood. To the right is the date 1994, marking the coin's production year, and underneath it, if minted in Denver, would be the D mint mark, though many 1994 cents also originated from the Philadelphia Mint, which at that time produced cents without any mint mark. By 1994, the composition of the 1 cent coin had fully transitioned to 97.5% zinc with a 2.5% copper plating, a change implemented in 1982 due to rising copper costs that made the original solid bronze composition impractical. The copper-plated zinc format allowed the mint to continue producing cents at far lower material expense while maintaining the familiar copper color that Americans associated with the penny for generations. This composition brought challenges. Zinc core cents can develop bubbles, corrosion spots, or plating cracks if the copper layer fails, making pristine examples more desirable among collectors, especially those aiming for high-grade sets certified by major grading companies. The reverse of the 1994 cent, designed by Frank Gasparo, presents a meticulously detailed view of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., which served as the reverse design from 1959, Lincoln's 150th birthday, through 2008. The memorial symbolizes unity, national memory, and reverence for democratic leadership. Gasparo intentionally included a tiny representation of the seated Lincoln statue visible between the central columns, making the coin one of the few circulating pieces to depict the same individual on both the obverse and reverse. Above the memorial stands the Latin motto, E pluribus unum, meaning, out of many, one, a phrase adopted early in the nation's history to express the coming together of diverse states and peoples into a unified country. This motto complements liberty and In God We Trust, forming a triad that encapsulates the ideological foundations of the United States: unity, freedom, and moral principle. Beneath the memorial is the denomination 1 cent, while United States of America encircles the top of the reverse, emphasizing the coin's national authority and its role in daily commerce. In terms of production volume, the 1994 cent was minted in extremely large quantities, over 6 billion between the Philadelphia and Denver mints, making it a common circulation coin in most grades. However, sharply struck, fully lustrous, and flawless examples graded MS 65, MS 66, or higher can carry collector premiums due to the difficulty of finding perfect surfaces on copper-plated zinc planchets, which are easily scratched or oxidized. The 1994 cent does not have any major, headline-level varieties, but collectors still search for minor die cracks, die chips, double dies, and plating anomalies. Some small die chips near Lincoln's eye, beard, or the memorial columns are popular among hobbyists as investment-friendly minor errors, though they typically have modest value unless visually dramatic. Because zinc cents can degrade more quickly than their earlier bronze counterparts, a preserved 1994 cent in brilliant red uncirculated condition is considered an attractive piece for type call.